So we thank very much our friends at Paradise Aircraft. We think it's a great thing that you're doing this, and we think that some of the value to the audit is, well, you know, this gets kind of boring, and certainly if you start reading ASTM standards, that'll put anybody to sleep. So if you need some bedtime reading and you're having trouble with your sleep therapy, try reading ASTM standards, that'll do it. But these folks are going through that line by line, have already done so, and now we're going to go visit. We'll do a document review, and then we will be going to Brazil. Well, darn it, that's going to be some tough duty, but somebody will have to do it. So thank you very much for coming up here and beginning the process, and we welcome you as we go along. Very good. Bruno? Excellent. My next announcement is one that concerns our friends in Europe, where, as I said earlier, about in excess of 60% of all of our airplanes emanate from Europe. And we are very pleased to report that at the Aero Show, which, if you don't know that, is a very big show, has arguably become the most important show in Europe, at least for this class of airplane. It happens in a town called Friedrichshafen, Germany, a lovely little place, and that show has become quite a big event now. But it started out as a show for light aircraft and sailplanes and things like that. Today it includes biz jets and everything else. But it's heavily dominated by light aircraft, even more than our shows here. It's quite amazing. If you haven't been there, it's worth the trip once. At that event, just a few days ago, barely before this show started, the Aero Show concluded on Sunday. And at that event, there was a meeting held by an organization that will now be known as LAMA EU, or LAMA-EU is the way we're going to spell it. And it was headed up by a gentleman named Jan Friedrich, who is from the Czech Light Aircraft Association. That gives him some official status there, but in this case he was acting as the proponent for this idea, and he subsequently was given the title of Secretary General of LAMA EU. That's Secretary General is not an uncommon term to use for a leader position in Europe. And what we accomplished there was to gain the signatures of 35 companies. It does say Cessna up there. Cessna did not sign this thing yet. We believe they will, but they did not yet, so that should be amended. And I don't want to misquote there. Piper did sign this agreement, and they did so along with all of the major producers of light sport aircraft in Europe, specifically Flight Design, Tecnam, Remos, and many other worthy companies that I don't want to name right now just because it goes on too long. But those companies all got together and signed a document that said, yes, let's go forward with the creation of LAMA EU. Now, what LAMA EU is primarily going to do is be a lobbying organization. Auditing and things like that will still happen through LAMA USA. We will be in close cooperation, but LAMA EU is its own entity. It's run by Europeans for Europeans and for their benefit. Here's kind of the big difference. In America, we are used to having to deal with Washington, D.C. on some occasions, or maybe a lot of occasions. We also deal with our state governments. In Europe, you might say that their nations are the rough equivalent. This isn't fair to either side probably, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's a rough equivalent to a state here. So there are national governments, Germany, France, Italy, so on, Czech, where they have to deal with those people, and that's who they've been dealing with their regulatory authorities all along. But in 2002, EASA was created, so that makes it only an 8-year-old organization, and they're busy creating lots of structure to be effectively the same thing as FAA in the United States. In doing all of that, there became a new regulatory authority that all the manufacturers must deal with, or will have to deal with in the future. And EASA, because they've got quite a tall order to regulate all forms of aviation activity in the European member states, are furiously creating regulations and sending these things out. And each of these companies could have somebody reading all the new output of what they call CRDs, comment request documents, and other things that are part of their process there. It becomes quite burdensome just to keep up with it. But the danger is EASA is talking about requiring type certificates and something called design organization approval and production organization approval, and that would run these small companies well in excess of 100,000 euros, or about $135,000 per year, to be part of that program. And that doesn't include their audit fees, and there's a whole schedule of what they call, the official term is fees and charges. Unlike here, when FAA goes out and visits, it doesn't cost the person who is being visited to have them come. In Europe, that's different. It's 225 euros per hour, about $275 an hour for each of 2 people, including all their travel time every time they're going to come and visit your facility to give it approval. In the long run, some of the bigger companies could afford this cost. Many of the smaller ones would simply go out of business if they had to pay those kinds of fees. So it's an onerous system that doesn't really accomplish any more, we think, than what could be accomplished through the ASTM process. So LAMA EU, trying to summarize this, they had about a 3-hour meeting over this, and I certainly won't keep going that long, but the main idea here is to say, look, EASA, we understand you may need a lot of regulatory structure for a certain class of airplanes, but for this class of airplanes, this is those folks over there saying, I'll just be their voice here, we want one-to-one with the U.S. ASTM system. That is, they want to meet the ASTM guidelines in their country and have that supplant the need for type certificate, design organization approval, and production organization approval. And in doing so, we can keep the costs much lower, and we think we can do the same job that we've had here. And while there have been some accidents and losses here, and we're sorry for every one of those, certainly for the families affected, the truth of the matter is safety in the LSA space has been quite good. And that's just not me saying that. That starts at the top with Randy Babbitt, the FAA administrator, the new FAA administrator, who has said exactly that in public comments as well. And so has the top people of the NTSB. They are acknowledging that while we would like to eliminate all accidents, the accident rate in LSA is not bad. We believe we can use that persuasively with the folks in the EASA as well, and now we have a way to do that. The other important component of this is EASA, like many regulatory organizations, does not want to have 74 different manufacturers all sending them things and writing them letters and keeping them busy. EASA is only, I believe, about 600 employees compared to many tens of thousands for FAA. So they just can't keep up with it all. They want a manufacturers organization to present the views of the industry, and now we are ready to do that. So I'm very pleased to do that. But it has one last component there, that line Global USA, which is a line that Jan Friedrich has coined, if you will. There were representatives from India and China at the Aero event, and both of those countries are also looking at it. Today, I believe the count is about 12 countries that have already approved or have in various stages of approval the use of ASTM, and there are more than 30 more countries that are doing that. But we know that if the United States and the European Union make for approvals of the ASTM process, we believe that many other countries are just going to get in line. Now you have, for the first time in aviation history, the opportunity for an aircraft to be certified to one standard that might apply around the world. And that's very significant compared to the cost of gaining approval here and then going country by country to get type certification approval in other countries. So that's our summary for LAMA EU. We can do some questions about that later if you like, and go a little further with it. Here is sort of the list of the things that we're going to do, and I can provide some more of this, but it's also included in some documents that Randy has in the back there and can give all of you. And of course, I could do questions and answers at the end of this time. So, I'm an Apple computer user, and one of my guys that I like to watch to see how to do a good presentation, I don't do as well, but I try anyway, is Steve Jobs of Apple Computer, who's become renowned for his presentation. And he always does one more thing at the very end. It usually gets a lot of attention. Here's one of the things I think is very cool. There has been a lot of people saying, hey, what happened to the prices of LSA?